YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel. And today on Tool Talk episode 25, we're going to be going over how to properly jack a vehicle and set it, because you never just want to use a jack. Now, some of this information may not be informative to some of you guys that work on cars all the time, but for somebody that's just starting out, maybe just bought a project car and is trying to learn how to restore a car, they're going to come across having to jack the vehicle up and possibly leave it up in the air. So I'm going to be going over the things you'll need, safety procedures, and just some tips and tricks in order to get the job done right and make sure that you're doing everything safely. So like I was saying before, it is very important when lifting a vehicle, not on like a 4-post lift or anything, but at your house, if you don't have a lift and you're just using a jack, you never want to support the vehicle with just the jack. Whether you're just lifting the front end, just lifting the rear end, or you're lifting the entire car. Like my 85 project car, I've had it up in the air for multiple days, and obviously I'm not just going to hold that with the jack, because jacks are meant to lift, not necessarily hold, because jacks can fail, and that's where safety goes down. So you always want to make sure you have jack stands. I will show you everything that I'll be using. You also want to make sure you either have wheel chocks or blocks of wood to place behind or in front, or both behind and in front of your tires when jacking either front or rear of the vehicle. You also want to make sure when lifting the front of the vehicle that you'll be using your emergency brake and making sure the car is either in park or in first. Now, with my car, it doesn't really apply because it doesn't have an engine or transmission, so I have to use wheel chocks and the emergency brake. Then I'll just be going over safety tips about using a jack, how to place jack stands on different materials such as asphalt, whether you're working in the street, on a softer material. You never want to jack up a car in dirt or in the grass or in your yard, wherever. You don't want to jack somewhere that soft. But if you have a driveway made out of softer material, you don't want to place the jack stands just on your driveway, because the weight of your vehicle can actually push the legs of the jack stands into your driveway. So I'll be going over some procedures that kind of help protect you and your home. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get into it. If you like it, make sure to hit that thumbs up, comment if you have any questions or any tips and tricks that you know of your own, and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys. Okay, so what we have here is what you would need for lifting a car off the ground. And some of it might look silly because we just have some wood here. You can get chop blocks that are actually intended for holding wheels, but wood will just work just fine, or a brick. And then this flat piece of wood, that is for setting your jack stands on when setting them to hold a vehicle that is on a softer surface and you don't want to damage it. That will prevent the legs of the jack stand from actually digging into the asphalt or your driveway if you're lifting on a softer surface. And then you have your jack. This is a 3-ton jack, so it's good for basically any car and SUV, but once you start getting into the larger trucks, you might need a bigger jack, but for the majority of the vehicles out there, this will work unless you're working a lot of bigger vehicles. Same thing with the jack stands. There are 2-ton jack stands. You always want to make sure that your jack and jack stands are rated well above what you're lifting. Even if it's close, I would suggest not even doing it, because this is life or death. I mean, it might not seem like it to you guys. It might sound silly, but having a few thousand pounds drop on you, that's not something you want, so just be safe. One thing I wouldn't suggest that I see a lot of people do is putting jack stands and stuff on cylinder blocks. Do not do that. Cylinder blocks are not strong enough to support the weight of a vehicle. Even my vehicle with no engine or trans in it, I still would not trust it. So there are a few different types of jacks. You got bottle jacks, this type of floor jack, scissor jack. There's a lot of different types, but the main one that you're going to be using if you're working on a car a lot is a floor jack like this. It's not too often that you'll find yourself using a bottle jack or scissor jack unless you have a flat tire on the side of the road. And the way this works, this one has a handle that turns to lock the jack so you can raise it, or you spin it counterclockwise to release it. Some will actually have a little screw down in the bottom that you had to take the handle off of the jack, spin the screw to lock and unlock the jack from being able to be pumped up. I also suggest if you have a smaller jack and it has really small wheels on it, then I would suggest using wood underneath of the jack as well. But this one has pretty wide wheels on it, so I don't really take the chance of damaging my floor or anything. So I won't be placing wood underneath of this. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna cover are jack points, where you wanna jack different types of vehicles up at. You don't wanna be going on certain spots of the engine because you can actually damage the body. Now with this one, it's actually pretty nice because it's got a larger plate on top of the jack. Some of them will come with smaller ones. And this, I just feel better with a bigger one because you cover more surface area. So that's one of the things I look for in a jack. You can also replace the head or the plate of this jack with like a transmission mount, so you can actually hold transmissions and lower them out of vehicles. So let's get into some of the spots you can jack at and some spots that you shouldn't jack up a vehicle at. Also, a good place to look if you're not sure for your vehicle, check out the owner's manual or look up the manufacturer's information online. You can find it almost anywhere. So that's one thing I suggest if you really don't know. All right, first I'm going to be showing you my 85 Camaro. It's basically the same thing, 82 to 92. The reason I'm going to show you on this is because it's one of my cars, but it's pretty easy to show you because it's pretty open. You can see through. So that's one reason I'm going to show you this vehicle, and then I will be showing you the jacking points on my daily driver. They're a little bit different than this, so I'm going to cover both. First off, most parts, or I should say, when you jack up a vehicle, if you're going to jack up the entire vehicle, I would suggest jacking up the front first, because the first thing you want to do before jacking up a vehicle is set your e-brake, put your vehicle in park or first gear so your rear wheels or your wheels are locked in place. That's just one safety tip. And then another, obviously my garage slants to the garage door, so I want to take wheel chocks and place them behind the wheels. Now, it's even safer if you place one on each, but I just have one behind this tire and one on the other side. Now, like I stated, if you're gonna jack up the vehicle completely, I would suggest jacking up the front first, and then after you get the jack stand set on the front, then you can work on the back. Another thing is if you're gonna be just lifting the vehicle, let's say just this side, to remove the tire, one thing you don't wanna forget to do before jacking up the vehicle is to loosen your lug nuts. You don't wanna get the vehicle up in the air and then the wheel won't stop turning and you can't get the lug nuts off. So you just wanna break them loose. You don't take them off, just break them loose, and then you can go about jacking the vehicle up. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to lifting points. So on this car, depending on where you wanna lift, let's start with the front first. I would actually go with the K-member, but I'm gonna show you the side here. Most cars will have a pinch weld right here, all the way to the back of the car. So, you see that. Well, on this car, you don't wanna be using this pinch weld because this older vehicle does not have a strong pinch weld here. It's, as you can see, it's been used before and it's already been damaged. So I wouldn't suggest picking it up there. Another area that you do not want to jack up a vehicle is on any of the body underneath of the vehicle, like the floor pans. that is all softer metal where you can damage your vehicle. If anything, go further inside and you can find the frame rail. That is a much safer spot to jack up your vehicle at. Always find a frame rail, unless I'll cover it on the Malibu. It's a little bit different. So, like I stated before, if I was going to jack up the front end of this car, I would go by the K-member. The K-member is the part that crosses the vehicle right here. It connects all the suspension to the wheels and actually holds the engine. Never lift from sway bars or steering components, suspension components such as the control arm or A-arms. You don't want to put the jack underneath a moving part of the vehicle. Also, underneath where your radiator goes, you never want to put it there because this metal is very soft. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of wood and I'm going to slide it underneath the vehicle, because I'm going to jack up the car and set the jack stands. If I forget to put the piece of wood there, I won't be able to get it in with the jack in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and place this underneath the vehicle and get the jack set to where I want it. Okay, so I have the piece of wood underneath the K-member, as well as the front of the jack resting on the wood. Now I'm going to go as close as I can to the center so I have plenty of room to place a jack stand on both sides. One thing you want to be aware of when placing your jack and everything is your surroundings. Sometimes you'll be jacking from the side of the vehicle where you could have another vehicle beside you. So you want to be aware of that so you don't take your handle and smack your other car. Especially if you're doing this as like a home professional and you're working on somebody else's car, it's something you definitely don't want. So now that we have the jack set, we can go ahead and tighten the handle so we can start jacking it up. And as soon as we get the vehicle high enough, we can get the jack stands under there. Never, ever get underneath the vehicle with just a jack holding the vehicle. So when you're going to place your jack stands, try and get them set with just your arms underneath the vehicle. Don't actually get underneath the vehicle. Alrighty guys, so I have it all set up. You can see how close the jack is to the K-member. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna slowly jack it up and then keep checking to make sure that the plate on the jack is actually lined up where you want it. You want it in a nice sturdy spot. So we're good there. It's on there nice and level. So we're just gonna continue to jack the vehicle up. All right, that's good enough for now. We just got the wheels off of the ground, and now you're just gonna come in and you're gonna try and set your jack stands without actually getting underneath of the vehicle. You want a nice, sturdy, strong spot for your jack stands as well. Where it is now is not a good location. That is the lower control arm or the A-arm, and you don't want to put it on there just because it is a moving part. So if I would let the jack down on it, it would just sit back down on the ground due to the suspension moving and resting its weight on there. So you can go where the A-arm meets the K-member. And right there is a good location. You would do the same thing on the other side. And make sure it is in a good location. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, and then I'll show you the rest. Okay, so we have both jack stands and the jack set. So now we can slowly lower the vehicle. You will hear noise as the vehicle resting its weight on the jack stands. And for a second safety measure, if you're just jacking up the front of the car, you can go ahead, as long as it's not in the way, leave your jack where it is, relieve the pressure, let it down a little bit, and then lock it back in. It's not holding any weight, but if the jack stands were to fail, you have your jack there as a second safety measure.
Now, if you were gonna jack up the different area of the car, obviously you can't keep it there. And if it's in the way, you'll have to move it, but you can find another location that's not in your way that will still hold the vehicle or be there as a second safety measure. But now that I've showed you that, I will just show you the locations on the rear of the vehicle, and then we'll move on to my daily driver.
Okay, so I've shown you where you can jack it up in the front of the vehicle and the pinch welds on the side of the vehicle. Now, on this vehicle, I would not lift it up by any of the pinch weld along the side. But when you do have a car, like my daily driver, that you can use the pinch weld along the side, never go from here to here. Never jack in between these areas. There's specific pinch weld areas in front and behind of each wheel that is the safest. As far as the rear of the vehicle, sorry, it's a little bit of a mess down here. Got an old exhaust. Obviously, you do not want to jack on the gas tank or the bumper. Some of the locations that are good would be right here on the axle. You can go from the pumpkin, but I would suggest using a block of wood in between the top of your jack and the pumpkin, because you don't want to damage the cover or break the seal or anything like that. But you can jack it up there and then put a jack stand under each arm of the axle, or you can jack from this location here, but be careful not to actually put it on the suspension part. So, moving on to the daily driver, if you were to jack the front of the vehicle up, there are a few different spots as well. Let me see if I can find my light. So, you have this location right here. Sorry about that, guys. Right there, that is specifically made for jacking the vehicle from the front. There's one on each side. Another thing you don't want to jack on the vehicle up on or by is this pan right here. That is your oil pan. Now, it might sound silly of me to say that, but there have been many people that actually, don't know a lot about vehicles and mistakenly, think of it as a strong location to jack a vehicle. Now, on the side of this vehicle, you have a pinch weld that goes all the way back as well. But as you can see right here in the plastic of the body, there's a specific spot cut out that is specifically for your jack. And then this location is actually an okay spot to jack the vehicle up at. The rest of this body panel is not. Do not jack anywhere along the floorboards. Then you see this frame of the vehicle. It is stronger, but it's not that strong. You can still jack from this, but just be careful not to damage it. Now, on trucks, you never want to jack the vehicle up by pinch welds. The body is attached to trucks and SUVs differently, and it is not a safe point to jack a vehicle up at. You always want to make sure to jack the vehicle up by the frame of the truck or SUV. As far as the back, I'm not really sure you can see anything from back here. You could go from the center, once again, being careful, or once again, they have a cutout specifically for the jack. So that's it as far as jacking up a vehicle and placing it on jack stands properly and in a safe manner. One thing I did forget to mention, but I definitely want you guys to know, once you get a vehicle jacked up, rest it on the jack stands to double check to make sure your vehicle is properly set. Go ahead and give the car a good bounce or shake just to make sure that everything is settled and the vehicle is going to hold. So I showed you some proper lifting points, but for your sake, I would suggest checking the owner's manual for specific mounting or jacking points, And if you can't find it there, or you don't have your owner's manual, you can find it online almost anywhere. Just Google search your vehicle jack points and you'll be good to go. Make sure to be very safe. I don't want anybody getting hurt. Make sure to set your e-brake and make sure your vehicle is in gear. Make sure to use wood underneath your jack stands or jack if you're on a softer surface. Make sure your jack and jack stands are rated for the weight of your vehicle or above the weight of your vehicle. What else? When lifting a truck, it is very important that you go by the frame and not the pinch welds or any part of the body of the vehicle. And just be aware of the different lifting points of the vehicle. I believe that's it. Just be safe. I hope some of you guys starting new projects or just getting into this, I hope this video was helpful, and if it was, please make sure to hit that thumbs up. Comment if you guys have any tips or tricks for you guys that have been doing this a while and you have came up with your own ideas, or maybe your father or somebody you knew that worked on cars gave you tips and tricks. Go ahead and leave those in the comments, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Thank you guys once again, and I'll see you guys next time.